Namaskar. Good morning. Welcome to the third session of MMPC12 Strategic Management. We were discussing in the previous session the block one, Introduction to Strategic Management, in which we were in the third unit, that is Strategy in Global Context. We had discussed the entry into the global market of the companies, how it can be in the international scenario. In the international markets, a particular company can enter either through exporting or through licensing or through joint venture or through direct investment. We had discussed these in detail last time. Now we move on to the strategic orientation. Again, continuing with the third unit, we move on to the strategic orientation of the companies in the global markets, in which we will discuss the EPRG framework. Now, EPRG is the synonym, is the acronym for E. E stands for ethnocentric approach, strategic orientation approach. P stands for polycentric approach. R stands for regiocentric approach, and G stands for geocentric approach. Now, as the name shows, E, ethnocentric approach. Now, what does ethnocentric approach mean? Ethnocentric approach of a company is considered to be when the company manages the international business in the global arena from the domestic nation or from its parent country. So while it is based in its own country, it is managing its operations, the foreign operations, foreign business abroad. So in a way, the primary market is its own country, that is the domestic nation or its parent nation, and the secondary market becomes the global market or the foreign market. That is ethnocentric approach. That is, you're giving more importance own ethnicity, to your own country, and mainly you are focusing on your business in the country of your origin. Next comes polycentric approach. Now, what is polycentric approach? The business in the global market, in the foreign market, is managed from different countries. So different countries where the organization is doing its business, that is where the organization is selling its products or services. So what it means is, although it might be based in one country, but then depending on, let's say it is having a global business, it is having international market in the US, it is having international market in the UK, it is having international market, let's say in UAE, it's having international market in Australia, it is having an international market in Singapore. So being in 6 different nations, what is it doing? It is doing it's managing its business, its company from these 6 nations. So that is what it becomes polycentric. Poly, more than one, numerous. So the center of operation is at different nations. The third is regiocentric approach. It originates from the word regional centric. So what does regiocentric means? Division of global markets into regions. Strategies are formulated according to regions. Now, what does that mean? The whole globe, let's say we are the market, the company is having business in different countries. So what it will do, it will try to divide the countries into various regions. So let's say it has business in Asia. So in that also South Asia, then it might be Southeast Asian countries. So one region would be South Asia, one region would be Southeast Asian country, one region would be, let's say, Western Europe, one would be Eastern Europe, one would be, let's say, North America, one would be South America. So what it does, the whole market is divided into different regions, and according to that, the strategies are formulated for the business. Region-based strategies. In a way, it's called region-based strategies for operating the business. Then we have the fourth approach that is in EPRG framework, that is the geocentric approach. Now, what does it mean? Geocentric, that means there is no distinction. The same product, same service is being provided across all the nations. So our operating strategy, or let's say our strategy, the business strategy of the organization would be such that it will have the same kind of product, not even similar, it will have the same kind of product manufactured, and it is being marketed, or the it is being sold, the same product is being sold irrespective of the country where it is being sold, irrespective of the region where it is being sold. So we have a similar strategy. So generally these are very high end products which are sold, wherein you know that your customers of this particular product exist in America, they exist in North America, they exist in South America, they exist in Europe, they exist in Asia, they exist in UK, they exist in Australia. So all across the globe, you will have the same product, and you will presume that there are certain customers who want this product irrespective of where they are located. So it's a kind of niche market strategies. Now we move to the block 2 of MMPC 012, wherein again we see that there are three units. The fourth unit, fourth, fifth, and sixth. So fourth unit is pertaining to external environmental analysis. Unit 5 is related to comparative analysis, and unit 6 is related to internal environmental analysis. So let's begin with the fourth unit, that is the external environmental analysis. Now, what are the objectives of this particular unit? Once we complete this external environmental analysis unit 4 of MMPC 0012, you will be able to understand the importance of environmental analysis. Like for a business organization, why does it need to do any environmental analysis? Why can't it just develop or formulate strategies without any analysis? So we will be able to understand how strategically important is the environmental analysis activity for an organization, for the success of an organization. Then you will be able to understand the dimensions of a general environment. You will know the relationship of the general environment with strategy. You will understand the concept of industrial organization model, which is also known as the IU model, and you would also be able to understand in detail. Although, if you recall, in the previous session, we had discussed PESTEL framework of strategic analysis, of strategic management, but we had discussed it very much in brief. In this particular unit of external environmental analysis, the unit 4, we will discuss PESTEL framework of business analysis in detail. Now let's move on to the fourth unit, external environment. Now, strategic analysis, we are basically talking of external environmental analysis as a part of strategic management. Now, why is analysis of external environment important for any organization? Well, that is basically, it's important because it is considered to be part of this strategy formulation process for the organization. So strategic analysis is basically what it is concerned with structuring relations business cannot function without a certain set of dimensions. So strategic analysis basically helps the organization to form a link between the business and its environment. Any organization or any business or any dynamic order to survive It will either impede the activity or it will encourage the activity. So it is very, very important for the organization, because organization has, apart from its resources, apart from its internal resources and employees and everything, it has external stakeholders. Now external stakeholders, they are in the external environment. So how the external environment is evolving, how the external environment is changing, accordingly the stakeholders in the external environment, their tastes, their requirements, their needs, that would also change. So ultimately, organization is producing, let's say, the products or services for whom? For the people outside, for their customers. So until unless we don't know what the customers need, until unless we don't know how the environment is changing, how would we formulate our strategies for achievement of our objectives and goals? So we can say external environment affects the success or the failure of the organization. It is very, very important for us to do detailed, serious external environmental analysis for the success of the organization. And we can also say that thus we can say that there is a very, very strong connect, very, very strong link between how the environment is changing, how the business is responding to this changing environment, and how the organization or the business is performing. So there's a very strong connect. How the environment changes, the organization has to change, has to incorporate those changes. And how would it do it? With the help of formulation of its effective strategies. And as I told you, the external environment is dynamic. It keeps on changing. It is ever changing, continuously it is changing. So in order to manage this inherent dynamic nature of the external environment, the company has to continuously analyze and accordingly change its operations. So we can say that the external environment uh, is a source of opportunity for the company. If the company takes it that way, with the help of timely analysis, the external environment becomes a source of opportunity. However, it can also become a threat for the company if the company does not get prepared, if the company does not ensure preparedness for accepting these changes which are happening in the external environment. So, understanding the external environment. So, when we are talking of external environment, we can talk of the social environment, we can talk of the cultural environment, we can talk of the political environment, we can talk of the external environment, ecological environment, we can talk of the economic environment, we can talk of the legal environment. So, depending on these various macro factors, the company has to continuously understand these macro environmental factors, analyze them, and understand the changes that are happening, and accordingly make changes, strategic changes in its own operations. So we can say external environment assessment or analysis is equivalent to environmental scanning or the industry analysis. Now, the organization is not alone; it is not the sole organization operating, until unless it is a completely purely monopolistic situation wherein there is only one company which is manufacturing the particular product and does not have any competitors. That's something different. Otherwise, external environmental analysis is basically the environmental scanning or the industry level analysis. So the let's say there's an organization A. Now, organization A, as I said, it does not exist in vacuum. It has got the external environment. And when we are talking of the economic or the commercial environment, then we are also talking of the entire industry. So we are talking of organization B, C, D, E, which have similar operations, which have similar products, which have similar or maybe even the same products or the same services. So they are forming the part of the industry. So the organization A has to, apart from understand and analyze the changes which are happening in the external environmental other factors, it also has to see how the other companies operating within this environment under the similar products and services, how they are operating, because they are also source of opportunities, they are also source of threat for the company. Now, general environmental strategy, as I said, analysis is essential to see what impact does the environment has on the industry. Like suppose there are political changes, there are changes in the legal, let's say, rules and laws, regulations. There are changes in the regulations. Let's say there are environmental changes, ecological changes. Now, let's say there is some legal, there are some parliamentary acts, there are some parliamentary rules which have brought some changes in the ecological framework. So what does it mean? Now it will have an impact on the entire industry. So the company, which company will succeed? That company which will do the analysis and forge ahead, make the necessary changes on the basis of these ecological compliances that it needs to adhere to. So when it does that, the company which will do it the first, the company which will lead, will obviously succeed. The others will follow. So the changes will have different effect on different industries. So let's say there are some socio-cultural changes. Now, socio-cultural changes, there are some climatic changes. So let's say, let's take the example of pandemic. Now, when the pandemic struck across the globe, the tourism industry, the hospitality industry was seriously affected. So, but then the pharmaceutical industry, it was a boom for them because people were falling sick, and then there were also, opportunity for them to do a lot of research and development, and they had to develop these vaccines. So it was a boom for them, whereas it was disastrous for many other companies, many other industries. So the changes in the environment, they have different kinds of effect on different kinds of industries. And each industry, the organizations in the industries, they have to catch these cues, they have to check these, they have to see the hints that is coming from the environmental changes. They have to see what kind of changes are happening in the environment, and accordingly they have to modify their strategies, they have to modify their tactics, and so as to achieve their goals and objectives. Now, how is the analysis of the external environment done? A company which is into strategic formulation, it has to first of all do the external environment analysis. How will it do? There are three steps, basically three steps. One, it will do the environmental scanning. Number two, as a result of the environmental scanning, whatever information it gets, it's going to assimilate all that information, it's going to assimilate the data as a result of environmental scanning. And then on the basis of the information that it gets, the data that it gets from the scanning process, from the environmental analysis process, it will evaluate that data, it will evaluate the information, it will evaluate the details, it will evaluate the inputs it got as a part of the serious study and research, and then accordingly on the basis of that evaluation, it will use the results of the evaluation to change its strategies, to reformulate its strategies, to modify its strategies, so that the ultimate goal, that is the ultimate objectives of the organization, that is achieved. Now we will go on to discuss a very important concept, that is the concept of industrial organization model. Now, what is industrial organization model? It forms the basis of understanding the strategy leading to competitive advantage. Now, what is basically, we'll discuss in detail what is competitive advantage, but in short, I would like to tell you here that competitive advantage is, competition. That is, in the industry, there are a number of organizations, number of companies, number of business houses which are manufacturing, or which have similar products, similar services. So there is a competition between all these organizations, between all these companies, and that company, one company out of all these companies, will have an edge over the other companies, And that edge is basically called as the competitive advantage that it is having over its rivals, over its other competitors. So, who will have a competitive advantage? That organization which has a thorough understanding of the changing environmental situation, and accordingly that company which is modifying its strategies for achievement of its goals, for achievement of its objectives, so that ultimate the mission and vision of the company, it's able to reach its mission and vision of the company, that particular company will have a competitive advantage over other organizations. An industrial organization model is basically the basis for understanding the strategy of the organization, which would help the organization to have a competitive edge over all its competitors. Now, as I said, it forms the basis for understanding the strategy. Therefore, it is basically the external perspective to strategy. So, in order to make any decision making in order to make any decision at the strategic level, that is at the top management level, we have to have, this would be basically industrial organization would be the external perspective for those people who are involved in the strategic decision making process. Now there are certain assumptions in IO model. What are these assumptions? First assumption is external factors affect the organizational strategic activities. Obviously we assume that how the external forces are changing, the external forces affect the organizational strategic activities, not the operational activities, not the tactical activities, but the strategic activities are changed by the external forces, and accordingly they force the top level management, that is the people who are at the strategic decision making body, to make the changes to let's say navigate the company to the required direction. Second assumption is external environment forces to develop strategies to meet the demand. Now, demand again comes from where? Demand obviously comes from the external environment. The people, the customers who are outside, they will their requirements will change according to the environment. Again, their requirements would change according to environment. Let's say the economic condition of the country changes. Accordingly, the demand of the people would also change. Accordingly, the let's say the political there's political instability. So in case of political instability in a country, the people's demands would also change accordingly, and accordingly they are forming the part of the external environmental forces which would help the organization to develop its strategies according to these changes. Third assumption, all organizations within an industry possess similar set of resources. Obviously they have, within an industry they have similar set of resources, but in different industries they will have different set of resources, and these resources, because they are similar, they are comparable within, from company to company. The resources are comparable, the skills, the competencies are comparable between the various companies within an industry, and they are comparable. So the company which will have better skill sets, the company which will have better knowledge, the company which will have better competency, that will obviously succeed. And the last assumption is significant distinctions in strategically relevant resources across companies tend to diminish due to resource mobility. So the resource, when we see that the resources, there is a mobility of resources when the resources are shifting within the industry from one company to the other. So naturally, the distinction between the resources existing between in the various companies, that also distinction gradually diminishes. You might have a person working in one company. Let's say the managing director of a particular company might move from this company to another company or another similar company manufacturing similar kind of goods and services. So it will be a kind of strategic shift of the resources from one organization to the other organizations. It is the resource mobility which leads to diminishing distinction between the companies. What are the steps in IO model? That is industrial organization model. Let's see what are the steps. The first step is the external environment. Again, the first step in the industrial organization model. Here we are talking of the industry. So within the industry, you have number of companies operating. So the steps in IO model, the first is external environmental analysis. The second step is selection of industry with high potential for return. So what does let's say a company, what would it do? The company would perform external environmental analysis. Then, on the basis of this analysis, it will select the industry which has very high potential for growth and return. Once it knows that there is, let's say, industry I, there is automobile industry, there's pharmaceutical industry, there's food processing industry, there is let's say financial products, finance related industry, there's banking industry, finance and banking industry. So the company will try to see what kind of external environment these industries have, and then based on the environmental analysis, it will see which industry is going, if it forays into let's say banking, or it forays into, let's say, automobile industry, or it forays into pharmaceutical, or it forays into tourism, or it forays into textile industry, which industry would have higher potential for return. This it will get to know from its detailed external environmental analysis. So suppose it decides that yes, it would be good to expand, or let's say it would be good to diversify toward to textile industry. So it will do the strategic, third step will be it will do the strategic formulation accordingly. Once the strategies are formulated, the fourth step is resource deployment. Now, if it is a simple case of expansion, it might already have some resources and it would only expand those resources. It will, the scale of operation will increase. Accordingly, it will require more resources. But it might also be possible that suppose if it goes into diversification, let's say it is already into textile industry and now it wants to move into footwear. So if it wants to move to, let's say, from textile, you've seen nowadays there are n number of companies which not only deal with apparels, but they have diversified, so that they know that the customers come to the store and under one roof they are able to get their dresses, their apparels, they are able to get their accessories, they are able to get their footwear. So maybe the company wants to diversify. So then in that case, it will require whole new set of resources in addition to the resources which it already has. The fifth step is strategic implementation. Now it has, as a result of strategic formulation process, that is the step 3, it will have the strategies in place. Then it will be it will be a very important stage for the company to implement those strategies. Implement those strategies, move on with the implementation so that the goals and objectives are achieved, and thus this would lead to competitive advantage of that company as compared to the other companies existing in the industry. So this is basically the industrial organization model. So overall, if you see, the steps remain almost similar. We begin with the external environment analysis. We choose the industry which has the highest potential for growth and for profitability. Then on the basis of this industry selection, that we know that okay, we are now going to foray into footwear industry. So what we'll do, we formulate our strategies accordingly. Then we try to make an assessment of the resources that we have. Do we already have the resources? Or if we do not have the resources, we need to get a whole new skill set. We need to get whole new set of people. We need to have more of finances. We need to have more of machinery, a factory. We need to, let's say, establish a factory. And then, or if we are manufacturing ourselves, or if in case we don't decide nowadays, many companies, they don't do all the manufacturing themselves. Instead, what do? They outsource it. So you might decide that the company might decide that it's much more profitable, it's much more economical to get the products from a different company and then label it and sell it in the market. So that would be part of your resource development. And then the strategic implementation, you implement these strategies. Based on the implementation, then you achieve your objectives, and as and when you achieve your objectives, it will lead to a greater competitive advantage of the company as compared to its rival companies or competitors in the same industry. Now we move to the pestle framework. It's very, very interesting method of analysis. It is a very, very interesting and one of the most common method of environmental analysis for in strategic management. The pestle framework, it if as you would all recall, in the previous session, I had basically told you what does the word pestle stand. What does the word pestle stand for? It is basically an environmental analysis. And what kind of environmental analysis? Not micro but macro environmental analysis conducted by the company for strategic formulation, for developing its strategies. So it is a macro environment analysis. Why macro? Why is it macro? Because it involves the environmental factors affecting the organization. All the external environmental factors are studied, are analyzed in detail, are assessed in detail. So when we are talking of all the external environmental factors, obviously they are the macro level. Sorry, if we are talking of economy, we are talking of society, we are talking of ecology or the environment. If we are talking of political changes, sorry, not differences, but political changes. If we are talking of technological advancements, so all these are what? They are not micro level factors. These are all macro level factors. And in order to have successful or effective and efficient strategic formulation, we have to be aware of the changes that are happening in these external environmental factors. And these are very, very, these external environmental factor analysis is not one time process. It is very important, it is relevant for today, and they will also remain relevant for the years to come. Because the political, there'll always be political environment, there'll always be economic external forces, there will be socio-cultural changes happening, demographic changes happening, there'll be technological changes happening, there'll be legal changes happening, there'll be environmental changes happening. So, what does PESTEL stand for? P stands for political, E stands for economic, S stands for socio-cultural factors, T stands for technological factors, L stands for legal factors, E stands for environmental factors. Now, political forces. Now, what would be part of the political factors? That is, let's say, political changes or political stability or instability, political values and beliefs, the government mandate, the government regulations, taxation policies, all in nutshell, all the policies that the present government is having, is implementing, or the plan of action of the government, that will all be part of the political force. Next would be the economic force. Let's say gross national product, the bank interest rates, the repo rates, the inflation, the unemployment, the trade deficit, the export, the import, all this part, all the various economic factors, they form they together form the external economic force. Then we have the socio-cultural forces. What analysis of the socio-cultural forces or the changes that we need to make in our company, in our business, as a result of the changes in the socio-cultural environment of the organization. Now, what are the various elements Elements obviously would be the population, the demographics. So when we are talking of demographic, let's say the income level of the population, the education of the population, the health condition of the population, the lifestyle changes of the population, the social mobility, that is movement, let's say from rural area to the urban areas, migration from rural area to the urban areas, the social mobility, or not only rural areas to urban areas, let's say movement from urban area to urban area in let's say search of employment. So naturally, your external environment, your customers are moving, and as they are moving, their requirements would change, their likes and dislikes would change, and that will act as a force for the company to make necessary changes in its own products. So then the values, the beliefs of the people, the customs, the rituals, all these factors, they form they together, these elements, they together form the socio cultural external force which the company has to analyze in order to formulate the strategy, in order to achieve its long term goals and objectives. Then technological advancements, that is something which is very, very important. It's a very important factor nowadays for the company to succeed. So there are very, very fast, the technological advancements are very fast moving, the innovations are happening, the, let's say, the digital revolution that we seeing around us, the kind of, now we have the AI revolution. So the things, the let's say the mobiles. Earlier we were working on our systems, desktops. Then we started working on our laptops. Then we started working on our tabs. Now we don't even need a laptop. We can even, sometimes people work from there through their mobile. The mobile is their office. So the technological advancements, the technological changes, those changes also have to be taken into consideration, and accordingly, our strategies have to be evolved. Then the legal environment, the employment laws, let's say the product safety, health and safety of the organization, of the people outside. Now all these legal compliances, how the government is changing the laws, the rules, the regulations, let's say the environmental changes, all these things, all these legal changes will act as the external force for the company to change. Then there are these environmental changes, let's say the pollution levels, the global warming, carbon emissions, carbon footprint. Now all these are part of the environmental changes, the elements, and the company has to do a thorough analysis in order to succeed in its strategic formulation process, in order to have a successful strategic management process. Now, changes in these forces will lead to what? Changed product type, as I told you, changed market segmentation strategies, as I said, the change in the people, the customers are moving from one place to other, or our customer base is, let's say, widening or broadening. So, depending on our customer base, our product will change, our market segmentation strategies will change. Like if you remember earlier, there was a lot of difference between the segments of the society, the income groups of the society, the lower income group, then we had the lower middle income group, then we had the middle income group, now the middle income group, or the higher income group. Now the middle income group is considered to be having more of purchasing power. So depending on these changes, the company has to keep its eyes and ears open. It has to continuously analyze, accordingly change its market segmentation strategies. It has to change the nature of product positioning. Now, earlier you must have seen that, let's say, a car of 25 lakh was considered to be a product which would be, let's say, for the higher income group. But with increased disposable income, with increased income of the people, the product positioning will also change. Now, if we see the people in the middle income group, they go and normally they go and buy a car of 25 lakhs, valued at 25 lakhs. So the product positioning has to change. Now, earlier, again, this was another example I'll tell you. Earlier, purchase of a car was more common in urban areas. Now you see, even when you go to the rural areas, you have car showrooms there. Now, establishment of car showroom is a changed strategy of the automobile industry, because we know that people in the rural areas, they also, although maybe earlier also they had more purchasing power, but they didn't have much of awareness. But now, with the enhanced awareness levels, these people, they are into changed lifestyles. So change in their lifestyle is forcing the companies to change their market segmentation strategies, to change their product positioning, to change the types of services offered, to change the choice of business. And if we don't do it, if the organization does not do it, if the company does not do it, it will perish. Let me tell you, it will perish. So it has to continuously modify, it has to continuously evolve. Continuous evolution is the key to sustenance and success for every company nowadays. And how would you sustain? How would the company sustain? Only if it continuously does the macro environmental analysis, and accordingly, as a result of macro environmental analysis, it modifies its strategies, it modifies its operations. Now, as a result of pestle macro environmental analysis, it also helps the company to identify its external threats and opportunities. So to develop what? Why do we need to identify the threats? Why do we need to identify the opportunities? Obviously for growth. Threats, so as to, don't take threat in a negative sense. Threat is, it's necessary to identify the external threats, so because the threats are the factors which will help us to grow, because then we will be more aware, we will be more alert, and we will try to make changes in our strategies, so that we not only remain where we are, but we also grow further. So we would need to develop clear cut mission, we would need to design strategies for long term achievement of our objectives, and we need to develop policies for short term achievement of our goals. How do we do that? Only when we are able to have a crystal clear vision, we are able to have a crystal clear idea of what our threats are and where do the opportunities lie for us to grow. Now, we will study the external factor evaluation matrix. Now, these external factor analysis is done with the help of pestle framework. Now, how do we evaluate that? We evaluate these external factors with the help of external factor evaluation matrix. What is this EFE? EFE is basically a tool for summarizing and evaluating the, as I said, with the help of pestle framework, we are able to analyze the macro external factors, macro external environmental factors. Now, once that is done, we have to consolidate that, we have to compile that. And this particular external factor evaluation matrix helps us to consolidate, to compile those macro environmental analysis results. What are the steps involved? We list key external factors, then we assign weight to each factor, we give weightage to each of the factors. Let's say point to let's say political stability. Political stability is very essential for the growth of the business. So let's say political stability is one of the factor, and we give a weight of zero point 0.5. Then let's say values. Now, values of the people, values of the traditional, we are in a traditional society, values don't change very frequently. So we might, we know that there are chances of changes in the values of the people would be less. So we give 0.02 as the weightage. Then we assign a ranking to each factor. We give a ranking or rating to each factor. Then we determine the weighted score. What would be the weighted score? Weighted score with our weighted score is obtained by multiplying the weight by the rating. The weightage that we assign to each factor, we multiply that with the rating. Let's say political stability, we rate it as 1, and weightage we have given as zero point 0.5. So determining the weighted score would be, for this particular external factor, would be 1 multiplied by zero point 0.5. And once all the external factors are listed, weights are assigned, they have been listed and they are rated accordingly, and we have determined the weighted score, then we add all these, we sum up all these total weighted score, and that would be the score for our external factor analysis. Now we move to the fifth unit, which is competitive analysis. So if you recall, at the beginning of this session, I had told you that the second block has got 3 units, unit 4, 5, and 6. Unit 4 is related to external environmental analysis. Unit 5 discussed in detail the external environmental analysis, that is the unit 4. Now we move on to unit 5, that is competitive analysis. Now what would you understand at the end of this particular unit? You would understand the concept of competitive forces, you would understand the concept of competitive analysis, because there are competitive forces. We also need to analyze these competitive forces, so that is the competitive analysis. Because they are, if you recall, some time back I told you that industry analysis is also part of the external analysis. For a particular company, what other competitors, what other rivals are doing, how they are performing, what are their threats, what are their opportunities, we also need to be aware of that, so as to know how our companies are operating, how they are changing. Accordingly, we change our strategies, we modify our strategies. So concept of competitive analysis you'll be able to understand. Then you would also be able to understand the Michael Porter's 5 forces framework of competitive advantage. This is a very, very important, and let me tell you, it's a very interesting concept to study. So you would know, you would be able to understand as a result of the unit, end of the unit 5, the Michael Porter's 5 forces framework for competitive advantage. You would know the role of strategic groups in competitive analysis. You would understand the importance of social media competitive analysis, and also you would be able to have a detailed insight into what competitive profile matrix is. Now, competitive forces. Now, why do we need to study the competitive forces? We need to study the competitive forces. Any organization, any business unit is required to the competitive forces playing out against it in order to strategy. So for effective strategic formulation, the company needs to do a thorough study analysis of the competitive forces. So it's not only does analysis of the external environment in order to have successful strategic formulation process, in order to successfully define its strategies, in order to achieve its objectives, the company has to make a detailed study of the competitive forces which are playing against it, or which are playing not only against it, which are playing outside the company. So it needs to collect the information about the competitors, it needs to evaluate them for strategic formulation, and it is very important because on the basis of the analysis of the competitive forces, on the basis of the analysis of the functioning of its competitors, the organization will be able to understand what are the various important forces and accordingly manage its strategies. Now, competitive forces, what are the various competitive forces? The competitive forces are the strengths of the competitors, the weaknesses of the competitors, the objectives and strategies of the competitors, then what kind of analysis the competitors are doing in terms of pestle framework, yes, and how these companies are changing themselves, how they are modifying their strategies as a result of the pestle framework analysis. Then vulnerabilities of the competitors. Now, what are the factors which are threatening the competitors? Because they are your competitors. So if there are factors which are threatening the competitors, they would be threatening you also as an organization. Now, what kind of products and services are being offered by the competitors, and how these products and services are being positioned by the competitors. Then the status of entry and exit of new and old organizations. Which organizations are already existing in the market, and what are the possibilities of new organizations entering the market? And if there are possibilities, so which are these companies which are going to enter the market? Then, which are the key factors resulting in present competitive position in the industry? In the industry, how the company stands, where does the company stand, and why, if it stands at a particular position, why does it stand there, and how we can improve further? Sales and profit ranking of major competitors, supplier and distributor relationships of the company, the company's relationship with the suppliers and distributors, threat to the competitors. So, threat to the competitor due to substitute products and services. Substitute products and services would be the products and services which would be products and services of maybe similar industry. So all these together form the competitive forces which need to be analyzed in detail by the company in order to successfully formulate strategies and achieve its organizational objectives. Now we go to Michael Porter's five forces framework. I'll just tell you in brief about it, and then in detail we move on. We will discuss about it in the next session. Well, Michael Porter's five forces framework. According to the Michael Porter's framework, competitive analysis is one of the most important part of strategic analysis. So, apart from analyzing the external environment, we also need to analyze in detail, very seriously, the competitors existing around us, because that will help us in modifying our operations, and that will help us in determining the course of action which we need to take so as to remain successful and so as to ensure sustainability of the company. It involves the following: identify the strategies of the competitor, assess the strengths and weaknesses of the competitor. I mean, what does the framework involve? The framework involves identifying the strategies of the competitor, identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the competitor, and then, based on these two factors, develop own strategy and establish unique service proposition, that is USP of the product or service that the company wants to uh, offer. So what we do, identify the strategies of the competitor, which would mean we need to identify all the competitive forces that we have listed here. We need to make a detailed, in-depth study of all these forces. That only together will form the the strategies of the together will form the strategies of the competitor, and we'll be able to know where do we stand vis-a-vis these strategies of the competitors. We assess the strengths and weaknesses accordingly, strengths and weaknesses of not the competitors, and also our strengths and weaknesses vis-a-vis the results of the analysis that we have done of our competitors, and accordingly we develop the USP of our products and services, that is unique service proposition, that is how our product is going to be different and more superior and unique as compared to the products of the other competitors in the industry. So Michael Porter's five forces framework is widely known tool for analysis of the competitive environment. What are the five competitive forces according to Michael Porter? Well, the five competitive forces are rivalry among competitors in the industry. That is the first force. Second force is threat of potential or new entrants. So we have, let's say, 10 companies in an industry manufacturing a particular kind of product. So, will these 10 companies remain the same as they are today? Will there be only 10 companies? No, there are chances that if there is more scope for growth in this particular industry, there would be many other companies which would be entering the market, which would be entering the industry. So that would pose a threat. Then threat of substitute products and services, bargaining power of our suppliers, and bargaining power of our buyers. So these are the five competitive forces, according to Michael Porter, which help us to do the comparative analysis and which lead to defining the competitive advantage of a company. These competitive forces basically they help in identifying and defining how competitive the organization is and what kind of competitive advantageous position the company, the organization occupies as compared to its competitors in the industry. Well, this is the Michael Porter's five forces framework. We will, as I told you, there are five competitive forces. So you see in this chart, the competitive rivalry occupies the central position. It is the main force, main competitive force in the framework. Then we have the threat of new entry, threat of substitution, buyer power, supplier power. So these are the five competitive forces. Now let us look at what we have discussed so far today. We will quickly recap. Well, we were discussing the block 2 of MMPC 012 strategic management, and in the block 2 we discussed the external environmental analysis, importance of external environmental analysis in strategic management for any company. We discussed partly, we have not yet completed, we discussed the comparative analysis, the importance of comparative analysis as a part of environmental analysis in the process of strategic management. In the external environmental analysis, I hope you would now be able to, you have understood the importance of environmental analysis. That is why a company needs to do environmental analysis. What are the various dimensions of general environment? What is the relationship of general environment with strategy? The concept of industrial organization model. We have also discussed the PESTEL framework for analysis and its implications. Now, PESTEL framework, as you saw, these are the factors, the political factors, the environment, economic factors, the socio-cultural factors, the technological factors, the legal factors, and the environmental factors. How analysis of these external effective strategic formulations, strategy formulation, this we have studied. We have studied the external factor evaluation matrix also. That is, once we have done this analysis of external factors, that is the PESTEL framework, using the PESTEL framework, how we are going to consolidate and compile these results. So that is what we studied in external factor evaluation matrix. Then we moved on to the unit 5, that is competitive analysis. And in this, we have understood in detail the concept of competitive forces. We have understood in detail the concept of competitive analysis. That is analysis of the various competitive forces, in which we saw that there are many competitive forces existing outside the company, existing within the competitors, which we need to study so as to successfully identify our strengths, our weaknesses, so as to successfully modify our strategies. And these competitive forces, as you see here, the strengths of the competitors, the weaknesses of the competitors, the objectives and strategies of the competitors, then how these competitors are also, obviously they're also into external environmental analysis, and as a result of the external environmental analysis, how these competitors are modifying their strategies, or how they are formulating their fresh set of strategies. Then what are the vulnerable factors of the strategies? So then in brief, we discussed Michael Porter's five forces framework. We will discuss this in detail. We'll discuss this chart in detail, hopefully in our next session next week. So I look forward to seeing all of you in the next week, next session. And I hope that you find these sessions useful. Thank you so much. Namaskar.